starting with 1.3.4, getting more into our skills using Fusion. Anytime you open up Fusion, we have an untitled project. Good habit would just be to start saving immediately and give this project a name. So right now we're going to name our project 1.3.4. After hitting our save button, you guys are going to save into your student file or your appropriate file that I can go check. We're going to hit save, and now we get this check mark, and then eventually we'll get this orange cube at the top. That just means this is a saved file so that we know everything will be the place we want it to be when we open this back up later. So we're going to create a sketch. We're going to put this in the bottom plane, so like the horizontal plane, and we're going to create a rectangle. There are three types of rectangle tool: the 2-point rectangle, where you pick the opposing points; the 3-point, where you just pick all 3 points and then it builds a rectangle around that; or a center point rectangle. That's the one we're going to use today. So we're going to put that center point of our rectangle right on the origin, just because that will lock down a rectangle. And that's usually the best practice, is you want your geometry to be touching that origin in some way, just so it has a reference point. When you first start a sketch, there's only one lockdown reference point, and that is the origin, so we're going to make sure we use that. Your rectangle should be 6 inches wide and 4 inches tall. We can hit enter. Now we have a rectangle. We're going to add a few other polygons. So we're going to start with a circumscribed polygon. We've used this before with our hexagons from the last project, but now we're going to make some different versions. So to begin with, we're going to make a pentagon. So remember that trick, hitting tab to go back and forth between these windows. We're going to make a pentagon that has a radius of 0.35 inches. So 5 sides at 0.35. We're going to create that pentagon. Just create it somewhere in this top region, because later we're going to make it vertical constrained to this center point. So we want to make sure it stays up there. If we put that pentagon over here on the side, it would make it a horizontal constraint. So we'll just make sure it's over there for now. Next, we're going to create a polygon that is inscribed. We'll put that over here in the top right corner. So we're going to give that a radius of 0.25. And we're going to let it keep 6 sides because we want to keep it a hexagon. And then finally, we're going to add a edge polygon. So we're going to make a triangle. This tool looks a bit different because we're just starting with a line. So we're going to get a line that is 1.25 inches long, hit enter, and all we've done is create a line. But as soon as we move our mouse cursor away, it starts to build a polygon and asks us for how many sides. So I'm going to hit the number 3. That gives us a triangle. This is an equilateral triangle, which just means all 3 sides are that same length. So we have our 3 polygons in our rectangle. So now we're going to start constraining them to put them where we want. Now, if you notice though, my mouse has a little icon on the bottom right because it still wants to make polygons. So I'm going to hit escape to get out of that. And now I can start adding constraints. So I want the horizontal vertical constraint, which is up here. I'm going to hit the center point of my pentagon and the center point of the rectangle. And now that pentagon is locked so that it is exactly vertical of this center point of the rectangle. Next, I'm going to hit a horizontal constraint on one of these lines. So now this line must stay horizontal. And then I'm going to hit the letter D to add a dimension, or you can go over here to create and hit the sketch dimension. I'm going to grab that horizontal point I just constrained, that line, and I'm going to grab the center point of the rectangle, and I'm going to pull it over here to the side. And now I want this to be 0.5 inches. So that just means this pentagon, this horizontal piece of this pentagon must be 0.5 inches away from the center of this rectangle. Now to start constraining the hexagon, we're going to start with a parallel constraint. We're going to take one of these sides and make it parallel to the top edge or the bottom edge of the rectangle, the 6-inch length rectangle. So now that side is parallel with the 6-inch side of the rectangle. We're going to add a coincident constraint. We're going to make the center point of this hexagon be coincident with this line. And now we're going to add, by hitting D, another constraint from the center point of that hexagon to this edge. And we're going to say this needs to be 0.5 inches as well. So now that hexagon gets pulled up into the side. Finally, we're going to constrain this triangle. So we're going to add a coincident constraint at the tip. Just be careful, make sure you get that little white dot. So we pick the tip of this triangle and then the tip of the rectangle. So those are now coincident. And then we're also going to add a coincident constraint with the center of the triangle and this dotted line. So now looking at this sketch, you should get in the habit of looking for these black lines, because this tells you that your sketch is fully constrained, which just means if I hit escape to get out of my tools, if I try to drag any of these lines, they're staying where they should be, which is good. So when I start to mess with other numbers later on, it's not going to affect the placement of these objects. So continuing on, we're going to start adding some more patterns. We're going to use some new tools. So some of those tools, if we go here to this create section, we have circular patterns and we have rectangular patterns. So to begin with, we're going to create a circular pattern of our pentagon. So we hit the circular pattern tool, and now we get this new palette up here. We're selecting our object, so we're going to drag and drop over all of our pentagon. Alternatively, I could go through and just click each of the 5 lines of our pentagon. After I do that, I'm going to hit over here. So now I get to select the center point of my pattern. So I want it to be the center point of this rectangle. So it automatically gives us a pattern with 3 pentagons. I want 5 pentagons though. So once we do that, hit OK. Now we have 5 pentagons that have rotated around that center point of our rectangle. Next, we're going to create a rectangular pattern. I'm going to select our hexagon, and then we get a couple different numbers we can put in. We're going to leave it at, we're going to go from extent to spacing rather, and we're going to, rather than selecting our directions, right now we have these 2 arrows. If we start to drag either of these arrows, you can see how we start to space out some additional rectangles. We're going to call this at -0.7. That looks like a good number, and we can leave it at 3. Now, if we grab this other arrow and drag it down, we start to get more hexagons. I don't quite want 3. I want to just do 2 rows of hexagons. So now we have 6 hexagons in this position. And if you look at the window over here with our rectangular pattern palette, we have those directions, and we can say symmetric, and that would split it up evenly on both sides. We're going to stick with one direction though. So we have our set down here, quantity, distance, and direction. Those are our hexagons going down. And then our quantity, distance, and direction, these are our hexagons going to the left. If you look though, one of these hexagons is overlapping with the pentagon, and I don't want that. So I'm going to hit suppression, and then we get these little check boxes that pop up on all these hexagons. I'm going to click this one, and that means that hexagon is not going to be created in this pattern. So now I can hit OK. And now I've created 5 hexagons in this pattern. Finally, I'm going to create another rectangular pattern for this triangle. So I'm going to select all 3 sides of the triangle. You see object selected, I have 3, each of the 3 sides. For directions, rather than doing the left and up like we just did, I'm going to choose this line, and I'll get rid of that direction. So now we're going to go along this line. I want 7 triangles, and let's just bring these down enough. We'll go to extent. So now the difference between extent and spacing, for extent, I'm just telling it how far out the triangles are going to go, and then it's going to space out however many I tell it to put in there. If I go to spacing, I'm telling it how much distance should be between each of these triangles. So we'll go with extent for this one, and I'm just going to pull it back just enough so that it doesn't overlap with that pentagon we have in the middle. So let's do -1.25 inches for those 7 triangles. So now we have our patterns up here, and we're going to finish our sketch at this point. From here, with our sketch up, we're going to create an extrusion. There are a lot of different sketches we can choose from, but first we're going to kind of choose the rectangular base in general. We're going to grab that, and then we're going to grab a few sections of these triangles. So I think we take this first triangle, and then we're going to kind of alternate with these others. So we create this kind of like arrow-like shape. So now we have these kind of like 3 cutouts that remain from our triangles, along with our 5 hexagons and our 5 pentagons. So let's extrude that. Let's go 0.2 inches. Seems like an appropriate depth. And just like before, anytime you use a sketch to create an extrusion, your sketch disappears. But if we hit this drop-down arrow, we can hit the eyeball, and then our sketch comes back underneath, and we can kind of use that to build on later if we need to. For our purposes, though, we're going to create a new sketch, so I can hide that sketch since we don't want it to kind of confuse our geometry right now. We're going to create a sketch on the top surface of this thing we just created. So don't choose the orange squares right now. We want to choose the surface of this object we just made, because when we do that, we get the lines that are in this object as part of our sketch geometry. So now we're going to create an offset and choose 3 hexagons. I don't care which 3 you choose. I'm going to start with this left one, and I'm going to create an offset that is negative 0.1 inches. You see it creates a line that is just offset from the hexagon or the pentagon that already exists. So I'll do another one over here, negative 0.1, and I'll do this one down here, negative 0.1. Now looking at our pentagons and our offsets, some of these interact with one another, and we don't want that to happen. So now I'm going to go to modify, and we have this fillet command. So we're going to create some fillets. And if I put my mouse cursor right on the tip of a point where I get that white dot, it gives me kind of the projected, like what the fillet would be. If I choose a line, it's going to wait for me to pick the other line to fill it. So any 2 connected lines, you can create a fillet, or you can just choose the point that you're wanting to fillet. So I'm going to choose this point. I'm going to give it a 0.2 inch fillet. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to continue doing that for all of the points on all 3 of my offsets. So fillet tool, pick the point, 0.2 is our radius for our fillet, and then repeat for each of these 15 points. Something that you can do as well, if you just right click, there's the repeat fillet button. So rather than going to find it each time, you could do that. So if I right click, repeat fillet, I can grab that fillet tool right away. Perfect. So now I have fillets on all of my 15 corners of the pentagons I just created, and I no longer have them intersecting. That was really tedious. One way we could have made this happen that might have been a little bit easier is if we just did one of these pentagons, and then we could have created a circular pattern to kind of bring them around, and we could have suppressed the ones we didn't like. So just know in Fusion, there's always multiple ways to get things done. The way I'm showing you doesn't have to be the best or only way. It's just how you're going to get there. In this case, this is probably the longer route. But at this point, we can finish our sketch. And now we're going to extrude these regions we have just created. We're going to pull those up. Let's pull them up 1 inch, hit enter, and now we have this odd shape that we've just created for our first part of 1, 3, 4. To continue for the second part of 1, 3, 4, I'm going to open up my bodies. I'm going to hide this body so we don't have to look at it for the next piece we're going to build in this section. So if I pull up our notes, we can take a look at the thing we're going to be making. So this is a screwdriver bit holder, and if we look, the base is about 2 inches long, which is kind of all we need to really go off of. Then at the top we have 5 holes for the bits of a screwdriver to kind of fit into. So some geometry we have going on. We have that pentagon shape at the bottom with this angle coming up, that pentagon shape going up to the top and then turning into a circle to hold those bits. And then there's a circle recess in the center of it. So we're going to kind of keep that in mind. So this part was made with injection molding, like this tooltip has up here. With injection molding, there's some different parameters in mind, namely that this whole piece is kind of angled inward, and we'll talk about that a little bit as we make this part, just so that it's easier for that thing to come out of an injection mold machine. In 3D printing, an additive manufacturing process, we're not concerned as much with it leaving a mold, so we have different things we would be worried about. So we'll talk more about that as we go through this process. But for now, we'll go back into Fusion. We are going to start by creating a polygon. Oh, nope, sorry, I guess we need to start with the sketch first. So we'll do that again on the horizontal plane. We're going to create our polygon, and we want a circumscribed polygon. So we're going to put it at the origin again, hit tab. I want this to be 5 sides because we're making that 5-sided tool holder. And then I think this was about 2 inches in diameter, so I'm going to give it a 1-inch radius and hit enter. So now this is going to be our base. So we'll finish our sketch. We're going to hit extrude. We're going to pull that up. Let's do 0.2 inches. And then we have this thing called a taper angle. So we could do this all right now by introducing a taper angle. So if we put this in at -45, you can see it tapers that object inward. So we start to like build in. If we leave that at 0 though, it would just make our regular pentagon. So you should just do the -45 and hit enter, but I'll show you a way you can do that without. Again, there's multiple ways to get things done. So I could just make my hexagon shape, and I could hit chamfer, hit this top surface, and then now I have a distance of 0.2 inches, and I would get the same object in the end. Either way you do it, you're going to get the same object. It's just about how you're using the tools or what pathway you want to take. Now from here, I'm going to extrude again without making a sketch, and I'm just going to choose this profile, and we're going to pull it up some distance that makes sense. So in order to kind of help me make sense of how tall this should be, I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to bring in a canvas so we can kind of reference. So I brought a canvas in, which is the picture from our notes, but you can also just reference with your iPad if you need to. But I messed up my second extrusion, so I'm going to go here and click that, right click and hit edit feature. So this is where you should be at. We're bringing in that, bringing up that section. I think 0.9 is actually a good height, but we need to add a taper to this as well. So we're going to say -5. That seems a bit steep, so maybe a -2 degree taper. So a negative taper just means it's smaller at the top. I'm at OK. So now we have this taper going upward. Again, because it's injection molded, that just means everything needs to be tapered to the top so they can leave the mold easily. So now we have this part at the top, and we're trying to get it to eventually become a circle. So we have a 5-sided shape, and we're trying to turn it into a circle. That can be really complicated if we're trying to do it by hand, but luckily there's some tools to make that easy. So the first thing we're going to do is construct an offset plane. So an offset plane just gives us a place to sketch that is offset from some other place on the project that we would sketch from. So for our purposes, since the circle base is kind of at this point, we're just going to bring this up to about where we think the circle base should maybe begin. So maybe 0.15 inches up. And we'll hit enter. And now we're going to create a new sketch on this new plane that we have. So if we look, our sketch is kind of floating above where our object is. So if I were to try to draw some things, they wouldn't be able to connect to these lines very well. So I'm going to hit the letter P, which brings up my project window. I'm going to select this top surface, the pentagon, and hit OK. So now the points of my pentagon are available to me along with the center point, which is really important. So I'm going to create a circle. This is a center point circle, so I'm just giving it a diameter. And this just needs to be some diameter smaller than whatever my pentagon is. So I'm going to say maybe 1.3. And that seems like an appropriate relationship to what's here. So it's just slightly smaller than what our pentagon was. So now we have this circle as a sketch. We're going to finish our sketch, and we're going to do create, loft, and if we pick our pentagon surface and then pick our circle surface, it will just mathematically connect those. So we have this thing that becomes goes from a pentagon to a circle, and now we can hit OK. So now we have that transition of shape. We're going to do another extrusion coming up from here for this last little chunk that is up. So I think that might be 0.6 inches seems good. And again, since this is something we're preparing for injection molding, we would add that negative bevel in here, that taper angle, to kind of have it be able to eject easily. And we're going to hit OK. So we kind of have the base ready. So there are 5 holes for drill bits. So we're going to create a sketch up at the top. And we are going to define some position where we think a hole should be. So I'm going to turn this into a construction line going from the center. I'm going to hit tab and lock this to 90 degrees. And I could position where I want that hole to be using this line. Alternatively, similar to what we did last time, I can just create a circle. I don't want this to be a construction line this time. I'm going to say those are, let's say 0.18 inch diameter drill bits. In reality, we would measure the size of that. I'm going to enter. So now I have this circle positioned here. I'm going to constrain it vertically with the center of this circle. And I'm going to hit the letter D so I can add a dimension between those two center points over here. And I'm going to say that should be 0.35. That doesn't look quite right. Maybe 0.4. Maybe I'll like that better. Now I'm going to create my pattern. This would be a circular pattern. I pick my circle. Then I'm going to go select the center point of this main circle. And I want there to be 5 of these holes. Hit OK. Now I have my 5 circles. I can finish my sketch. I'm going to extrude each of these. And we will go down. Sure, let's go down 1/2 inch and hit enter. So now we have 5 holes down 1/2 inch. Additionally, though, this object had a hole in the middle, so we're going to add that feature as well. Although I think that feature was explicitly just for injection molding, so that it could be punched out of the machine. We're going to add it anyway. So we're just going to add a larger circle. This one can be 0.35. That seems appropriate. Hit finish. And we're going to extrude that circle down as well. We're going to go down. We'll do a negative 0.5 for that one as well. So now we have that hole going down. Then finally, we'll add a fillet to this top outer edge. Just something really slight. So maybe 0.025. Just to kind of break that hard corner. So now we have our base. So something else with injection molding, often they are very hollow parts, so it's just like the shell of whatever object. So Our object, though, in Fusion is solid. So for a 3D printer, that would be fine because 3D printers don't make things solid. They actually have kind of a structure on the inside that is mostly hollow. For our purposes for this model, though, we're going to turn it into something that looks like it was injection molded. So if we go to Modify, it's up here at the top, but we can also go down and find it right here, the shell command, and this kind of shows you what that looks like. It just turns some solid body into a shell. So if we do that, picking our faces or bodies, so the face we click is the one that's typically going to be open. So if I click from the bottom, we're going to go inside. We want a shell thickness. Let's make this 0.1 inches maybe. That seems a bit thick. So maybe 0.06 inches. So now it's going to create a shell for all the surfaces, but it's going to get rid of this bottom face for us. Since we're going in the inside, if we went outside, then it would create a shell going in the outward direction. So I can show you that. If I go 0.2, it builds up on top of what we had just made, which isn't what we want in this case. So we want this to go inside our 0.06. So it's just that outer line of our body determines what direction the shell is going to go. So we could also make this a round shell, which just rounds off all the corners on the inside, or we can keep the angles sharp. For our purposes now, it doesn't particularly matter, but just know that's a tool if you ever need it. So we're going to hit OK. So now we have our shelled out screwdriver bit holder. Something else we're going to add to this, if we pull up that canvas again, it has a kind of dome protecting it. So we're going to do one more feature. So if I go back to construct, and I'm going to do a axis through a center. So I'm going to pick this center hole. And now it gives me that dotted line, that center line through the center of it, and I'm going to hit OK. Then I'm going to construct a plane at an angle. I'm going to hit that line. So now it's giving me a new sketch plane that I could use that is exactly through the center of that circle. I could also change that angle to 90 or 30 angle or 30 degrees or whatever angle I want. I'm just going to leave it at 0 for now. So now I have this sketch plane. So I'm going to create a new sketch on that plane. Now that I'm here, I'm going to hit project. I'm going to hit the surface of this taper, and I'm also going to hit the geometry here. So since I picked the sketch plane that would exactly show me all the way over to this edge, and then I can also do the same thing over here. So I get the shortest possible edge and I get the longest possible edge in that slice. So I'm going to project all those pieces. So now I can kind of see where this lid would be resting once it sits down. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with a construction line. We're going to find that center point. We're going to go up, let's go up 2 inches. That seems nice. From this point, we're going to do a rectangle. We'll go over, let's turn this off of construction. We'll come down onto this side. But if we line it up with this point, if we imagine if we were turning this into the piece that was going to be the lid, if it went all the way down here, it would interfere, it would touch that kind of part of the base. So we're going to stick it at this point. So to get that to happen, if I go to the point and get that blue square, and then I kind of slide over, I get a dotted line that's hard to see. And if I line up both points, I could get them to give me both constraints. But if it doesn't, I'll just go right here for now. Then I can add that coincident and have those be coincident with one another, but that would bring me all the way down. Or if I go backwards, I could make them collinear lines between these two lines. What might work best though, or what I could show you to have a lid that would fit perfect if we go all the way down, and to show you a new tool. So now that is coincident, so it is going all the way down to this part of the base, which is the thinnest part. So now we're going to create another rectangle coming from this point. We're going to go up some distance and then touch back to our center line. Hit escape. Add a dimension between these two lines. That will be some number. We'll just do 0.1 for now. Let's see, what is the distance between these two? So I can see the distance between the rectangles already built was 0.119, and that's based on the distance between these 2 points. I can find that, by the way, if you go up here to the inspect tool. That lets me pick any 2 points and it'll tell me the distance between them. So I'm going to mirror that on the top so that it's the same thickness. So I'm going to go 0.119, hit enter. So now I have this consistent thickness that I've built up on this rectangle. So I'm going to finish my sketch, and I have this profile that I can rotate around now. So if I go to the revolve tool, I'm going to pick that profile. Ooh, and if you notice, it's cutting into the base right now, which isn't ideal. So I'm going to hit cancel, and I can go through and right click my sketch, hit edit sketch, and I'm just add a line continuing down from here. So now it connects the smaller rectangle with that larger rectangle, and now I can hit finish sketch. And now when I select that profile, it just gives me that edge going straight down. And we're going to revolve it around the center axis that we just created. You see right now it tries to cut because it was intersecting. We don't want it to cut though. So for our operation, we're going to say new body. You can see it creates this solid shell around our object. We're going to hit OK. So it created that new body. And the tool we're going to use now, if we open up our bodies, we have our hidden body that was our rectangular piece. We have our base, and then we have the lid. If we go to combine up here and modify, we have our target body, which is the thing we want to change if we select body 3. And then our tool bodies are the things we're using to change it if we select body 2. And the operation, we don't want them to join to become one piece. We want them to cut. So we want the tool body, the base, to cut away from the lid. And then we're going to hit keep tools because after this is done, we don't want our base to go away. We want it to stay around. So we're going to hit OK. So now it looks like nothing has happened. But if I hide our bodies, we can see the lid now has this contour to it that would fit perfectly with the base we had just made. It looks like we also have the inner ring that got cut off of that. So this is body 3 now. It will probably be the same body for yours. But if this ever happens, if there's ever a piece of something you don't want to be present, I can go over to this body, right click, don't click delete. That is a bit different in Fusion. Instead, we just want remove because this is something that gets added to the timeline, which means I can undo it later if I feel like it. So always remove, never delete. So now we have the case with a lid. Looking at the top, we can add a fillet to the outer edge. We should also add one to the lower edge or the inner edge. So I'm going to come in here, hide the base that was in our way, select that inner top corner, and select this corner. So now we have those two rings. We're going to add a fillet of 0.2 looks, actually let's go further. 0.4 looks great. So now we have our lid and our base. So something else we can do, if we hit the letter A, we get an appearance window. So looking at this window, we have Fusion appearances. So if we click Fusion appearances, we go to glass, and I can click any of these. So I'm going to just go with a light color glass. If I click and drag that, I can drop it onto my lid. and now it turns it into a piece of glass. I could also, I don't like that. That glass became darker than I thought. Let's do glass clear. How about that? Yeah, there we go. So I have this clear piece of glass. So I can hide those again. I can make them collapse by clicking the names. And then maybe let's go down to paint and a glossy paint, and we'll put a glossy blue on the base. So now we have painted objects, and we can change the material they're made out of as well. Now we're done with the appearance. We can hit close, hide our sketches. So now we have our screwdriver bit holder. Unhide your original object as well. They're kind of overlapping each other. So let's click object 1, our body 1, right click it, move or copy, just drag this arrow over just until they're not on top of each other anymore. Hit OK. Then at this point, save in the top left. User saved is fine. And there we go. This is all you need to do. Now we're done with 1.3.4.